Spurgeon here with RevZilla, and today we're going to take a look at the Klim Carlsbad Jacket available at RevZilla.com. So what we're seeing from Klim is a new form to how they're introducing their gear. They are now taking what has primarily been just strong ADV/touring gear, and they're actually delineating from that. And they're going to say that we're going to have now an ADV section, a touring section, and what they're going to call is their 626 line, which is more, outdoor-oriented gear. So what we're going to see is we're going to see the Carlsbad come in to replace the Latitude jacket as more of an ADV off-road piece, where the Latitude is going to shift over to the touring line, and it's going to be more for folks that are going to spend most of their time on pavement. And this is really something that we've been calling out for a long time. That Latitude jacket was definitely more just geared towards riders that were spending the majority of their time on road. So what you need to think about is if you're riding around in a larger ADV bike, are you spending 80% of your time battling off-road conditions? If so, this is probably going to be the option for you to consider. If you spend the majority of your time on road with maybe a fire road or two thrown in, you're probably going to take a look more towards the touring line of gear from Klim. Now, one of the things that I will say straight up front is that I have been using a Latitude jacket for probably the last 2 years, and I ride primarily off-road. And one of the things that impressed me so much from this is that the Carlsbad addresses so many of the problems that I currently have with my Latitude jacket for off-road use. And we're going to get into all of those in this video. Really where I want to start is going to be the sizing option, and High-Vis Brian on my left-hand side is going to stand at 6 foot, weighs in at 195 pounds, and has a 42-inch chest. He also has a fancy new haircut compliments of his wife. Now, when we're talking about sizing, Brian is going to be in a large. He used Klim's size chart, and it fit him spot on. This is going to be that traditional American cut from Klim. Also keep in mind that if you are planning on using a compression suit underneath this, if you're planning on pulling the armor out and using a compression suit, you might need to bump up a size. But really one of the things that we're going to hit on in this video is that they've redesigned exactly how the armor sits in the jacket, so you actually have a better chance of having that impact armor stay exactly where you need it to if you are using this off-road. Now sizes will range from a small up to a 3XL, but just keep in mind, if you go with that final size at 3XL, you are going to get a slight price bump for that jacket. Now, the Carlsbad is going to come in around that $550 price point, and there are 3 different colors available. You're going to have the gray, the black, and then High-Vis Brian on the left-hand side is sporting the gray-brown version. The next step up from this in Klim's lineup is going to be the Badlands Pro. And honestly, most people are not going to need to take that step up. Personally, I spend about 80% of my time on my Tiger 800 off-road, and this is going to be the one piece that I would go with. I would not bump to the Badlands Pro because it's so beefy, it's so aggressive. Honestly, if you're thinking you might not need the Badlands Pro, you probably don't. You can probably save yourself some coin, and this is going to be quite a lot of jacket for the money, especially if you're using this off-road. And that's because a lot of the changes that I've seen with this have made it just more comfortable, and it's more usable, to be completely honest with you. So one of the things that I had a problem with the Latitude was just how beefy the material was. Even stepping down to the Latitude for me, away from the Badlands Pro, it was still rigid, it was still stiff. I felt like I was fighting the jacket at times. I don't feel like that with the Carlsbad. They've changed the material. The main core material in this is their SPL 200. It's still a performance layer Gore-Tex, so it's still a 2-layer Gore-Tex shell. So you're still getting the waterproof, you're still getting the breathability. You're not bumping up to that 3-layer Gore-Tex shell, which is what the Badlands is going to be. But with that, comes that super crunchy, beefy, heavy material. This is going to be a much lighter weight piece. And for those of you truly moving around off-road, that extra range of motion is going to be immediately noticeable. And the first place I noticed this over my Latitude jacket is going to be at the collar. So keep in mind, we're going to compare this to the Latitude because essentially that's what this is. This is a Latitude jacket that is geared more towards off-road use. And when I first put this on, the biggest problem that I had with the Latitude, the collar was so rigid and so stiff, it was pushing up into my Adam's apple. I really found myself, even to this day with my Latitude, I fold the collar underneath just to get it out of my neck. With this, you can put it on, it was extremely comfortable. They contoured it with a 3D cutaway, and they've simplified the collar on this. So if you're looking at the Badlands Pro, one of the problems that I had with that was that it's so complex. There's snaps, there's Velcro. What you're getting with the Carlsbad is one piece of Velcro, and then you do have hold back if you want to leave it in the open position. But it's a much more simplistic approach, and again, it's the comfort factor that you're finding with this over the Latitude that really makes it much more appropriate for off-road. You're standing up, you're moving your head around, you're throwing the body back and forth. It's extremely noticeable, especially if you're currently using a Latitude jacket. Now, as we work our way down the arms, one of the things you're going to notice is that we now have ripstop nylon over top of your impact zones. So we're going to see it along the back. We're also going to see it on the shoulders, and then we're going to see it working its way down the forearms and over your elbows. And this is for that added reinforcement where you are going down in an off-road situation. Now, keep in mind, this is designed for those of you riding off-road, which means that it's going to be beefy enough to handle, 4 or 5 low-speed crashes every time you're out there riding. If you're like me, I have a tendency to fall over a lot when I'm off-road. As we work our way down, one of the main differences you're going to see over the Latitude, and this was a huge positive for me, is they've changed the vent scheme on the arm. Hi, Brian, I'm just going to hold your hand up here for a second. Now, if you're looking at the Latitude jacket, they used to have the vents run down the bicep. This was a problem because with those vents open, it actually would catch under underbrush in tight situations. If I was doing some single track stuff, it would help to grab. It almost caught up. What they did was they changed the vent scheme down towards the forearm a little bit, and then they gave this forearm adjuster to make sure that it kind of articulates it and holds the vent open. So what you can do is you can open the vent, and again, it's a water-resistant zipper. But by putting this adjuster at the forearm, it kind of keeps the lines clean and tight. The other thing that was a huge bonus for me is the way that they've installed the armor on the inside. Now, it's not changed the armor. It's still the D30 T5 Evo CE1 armor. But the problem that I had with the Latitude jacket was that the armor had a tendency to almost push up and sit on top of the elbow. So every time I'd go down, I would hit the bottom of my elbow, and it wasn't doing anything to protect me. So what I ended up doing with my Latitude jacket was pulling all the armor out and wearing a compression suit underneath. It became very bulky and cumbersome because the jacket wasn't sized for that. So what I like about this is you can get away without using a compression suit because the armor in the elbow, while it's still adjustable, there's 3 positions of adjustability, the armor now naturally sits more towards the bottom of the elbow. So it has a tendency to cover where I need it to cover for off-road crashes. If I'm going down off-road, chances are that elbow is coming down on the inside of it, and this works much better to make sure that my elbow is safe, as I'm continually knocking it onto rocks on the ground. Working our way down to the bottom of the wrist on this. Simple Velcro closure, nothing too complex, and again, ripstop working its way down on the cuff. The other thing you'll notice, pops of reflectivity on the bicep, and then those pops of reflectivity carry over onto the chest. Working down the body of the jacket, what you're going to see, you're going to have 4 pockets. You're going to have chest pockets with water-resistant YKK zips on the inside, and then on the outside of the chest, you are going to have that same vent scheme that we saw on the Latitude. Now, the one nitpick that I have here, I would have loved to have seen an added pop of reinforcement along the vent scheme. Keep in mind, again, if you're in some tighter single-track trails and you're riding in a standing position, this is going to be a potential snag point. You get this snagged on underbrush, you run the risk of just tearing that mesh which is holding this together. So I would have loved to have just seen just a little popper of reinforcement on the inside of that vent. Now, as we work our way down to the main 2 pockets, you are going to have top-loading waterproof pockets at the bottom, and then you are going to have hand warmer pockets on the inside of that. So you're looking at 6 total pockets on the front of this jacket. So just to wrap up what we're seeing with the front of this, you are going to have that vent scheme which has been slightly changed, no longer the bicep down to the forearm, and you are going to have those 4 vents total on the front of this with that 6-pocket design. Now, hi, Brian, I'm going to have you do me a favor and just face sideways with the hand in the rider position for me. So you're going to notice 2 main changes on the side of this if you're currently looking at the Latitude jacket. The first thing you'll notice is they've gotten rid of the waist adjuster. I like this. I wasn't a huge fan of the waist adjuster on the Latitude, and it had a tendency to catch up on me. So the fact that they've eliminated this is a huge plus. Again, keep in mind, they're making this more detail-oriented for the off-road rider, and sometimes simplicity is key. The other thing you'll notice, and this is going to be a hit or miss for certain riders, is they've eliminated the expansion gusset. And the reason they've done this is that they're expecting that most people riding this jacket are going to spend most of their time standing up, not in the seated position. So by eliminating that expansion gusset, they're saying, hey, you're probably not spending long amounts of time touring with this jacket. The Latitude will retain that expansion gusset, and this is going to be a hit or miss depending on who's looking at this jacket and whether they are a fan of that expansion to begin with. Now, the other thing you'll note is that you can see that reflectivity carry along the back, and you'll also have that dual layer of stitching all the way throughout all these seams. So you'll notice that throughout all of this, it's dual safety stitched throughout the entire jacket. Brian, you may go ahead and face backwards for me. So on the back of the jacket, the one thing I do want to point out, minimal branding. We've really seen Klim take a step away from the crazy amounts of Ks and climbs that they have on their gear. You're going to have one small little K located over on the right-hand side. Other than that, extremely clean lines. As we look at the back of the jacket, starting with the collar, you do have that shot cord adjuster, so you can kind of cinch this down if you want to make sure that there's no water pushing down from the top of the jacket. But the real main change you're going to see is the elimination of the one large horizontal vent across the back and the addition of 2 vertical vents. So we've now taken a 5-vent design that we saw with the Latitude, and this now becomes a 6-vent design. And I like this design a little bit better than the large horizontal vent. I feel like the airflow is going to help to just push through nicer. You know, the problem that I saw with the larger horizontal vent was it almost just made the jacket a little bit too loose fitting. And this kind of helps to articulate the shape of the jacket even with all of the vents open. Now you're still going to have that CE Level 1 Viper back protector in here. You can upgrade to the CE Level 2 armor throughout the entire jacket if you so choose, but it does come fully loaded with CE level armor throughout the elbows, shoulders, as well as the back. You can have pops of reflectivity working its way across the shoulders, and then you'll also notice that ripstop nylon is going to work its way across the tops of the shoulder as well. And again, this is for you riders that are spending most of your time off-road, the underbrush, the snags. This just helps to add to the durability factor of this jacket. You will have a shot cord adjuster at the bottom, and there will be tabs on either side to adjust this and make sure you can cinch it down. And there will be a connection zipper to match this with the matching pants. Brian, you may go ahead and face forward. So go ahead and on-Velcro and on-zip for me. Now the first thing I want to point out, you do have that weather guard rain gutter behind this. And what you'll notice too is there's little pops of bar tack stitching maintaining each of these little points. So you're not going to have to worry about this moving open. And that bar tack stitching is going to be carried throughout the entire jacket. So really one of the questions we get a lot when we're looking at this piece, you can go ahead and unzip it for me, is that, you know, a lot of folks say, well, this is a $550-ish jacket. What sets this apart from some of the lower level stuff? And really with Klim, it's that little attention to detail. It's all that bar tack stitching throughout all the potential fail points. Like I said, I've been using a Latitude jacket now for 2 years in pretty aggressive situations. And other than the fact that it's a little bit dingy and dirty, it really holds itself together nicely. And I have no fail points over those 2 years of abusing it. And that's because of all that little attention to detail that we're seeing throughout Klim. Now, as we open this up, one of the things you'll notice on the inside is that they have changed the interior of this jacket compared to what you would see with the Latitude. They've changed the pockets. So you used to have these large drop-down pockets on the inside of it. Those have been eliminated. And they've been eliminated because now you have the option to add a kidney belt. And this is some of the DNA that we saw carried down from the Badlands Pro. Now the kidney belt isn't included as a standard offering, but if that is something that's interesting to you, really it just helps to hold the jacket in one solid spot while still maintaining that range of motion. And you can add that if you so choose at a later time, but what you've lost is those drop-down pockets. You still have the pocket up top, and then on this side, Brian, go ahead and hold that side open for me. You still retain the pocket on top of this with the earbud pass-through. The other thing you'll note, there is still going to be a hidden security pocket on the back, a stash pocket, so if you are traveling long distances and you want to make sure that your valuables are hidden somewhere further back in the jacket, there's going to be a stash pocket on the back of that. And again, you will have that connection zipper in the back if you want to match this to the pants. Now remember, there are going to be those matching Carlsbad pants, and if you want to check out those, there is going to be a full detailed breakdown giving you all the information and changes that we're seeing with the Carlsbad pants over the matching Latitude pants as well. So make sure to check out that video if you are interested. So one of the things that I will say as I'm wrapping this up is that this is a very impressive piece from Klim, considering all the changes that they've made over the Latitude jacket. And I say that as a Latitude user. There's a lot of times where I'm out with the Latitude and I'm like, this just isn't doing exactly what I want it to do for the kind of riding I'm doing. 80% on-road, that Latitude's a great option. But for those of you out there that are spending more and more time off-road with your larger ADV bikes, Carlsbad is definitely one for you to consider. Now there's a lot of other riders out there utilizing Klim as well, and if you want to hear more about what they have to say, click the info button on your desktop or mobile device, which will allow you to read other rider reviews from folks that are already out there beating up Klim gear of their own. If you have more questions for one of our gear geeks as to which piece of gear is right for you and your style of riding, give me a shout, 877-792-9455, or simply shoot us an email, cs@RevZilla.com. Thank you for joining us for this look at the Klim Carlsbad Jacket. I'm Spurge. Enjoy the ride.